At 83, he boarded that plane to keep a promise he made 47 years ago. Nobody on that airfield believed what they were seeing. An 83-year-old man in a red jumpsuit standing at the edge of an open aircraft door at 12,000 feet, staring straight down at the flat Ohio farmland below. The same farmland where he'd spent the last 5 decades of his life, fixing engines, raising a family, and carrying a promise he never fulfilled. His name was Walter Briggs, and he hadn't come this far, through arthritis, heartbreak, and a body that had betrayed him more than once, to turn back now. Harlan's Creek, Ohio. Population 1,400, give or take whoever moved away that year. A town where the diner still had a handwritten menu on a chalkboard and everybody knew your truck by sound before they saw your face. Walter Briggs had lived in the same white clapboard house on Route 9 for 51 years. He was a retired diesel mechanic, 34 years at the county transport depot, hands that could diagnose a transmission problem by touch alone, and a back that reminded him every single morning that those years had not been free. He was 83 years old, widower, 2 grown children, his daughter Karen in Columbus, his son Daniel out in Phoenix. He was not a man who complained. He was not a man who asked for much. He drank his coffee black, kept his workshop cleaner than most people kept their kitchens, and on Sunday mornings, he drove his '98 Ford F-150 to the Harlan's Creek Baptist Church and sat in the 4th pew on the left, the same pew he had sat in since 1971. To look at Walter, you might see what the years had done to him. The stiff gait, the reading glasses he always forgot on the workbench, the slight tremor in his left hand that started 3 winters ago. But if you knew him, really knew him, you saw something else entirely. You saw a man who had never broken a single promise in his life, except one. His name was Tommy Greer, and Walter had loved him like a brother, because in every way that mattered, he was. They'd grown up 2 houses apart on the same road, built go-karts in Walter's backyard, fished the same creek from the time they were 8 years old. When Walter got his first job at the depot in 1967, Tommy had stood right there beside him and shaken his hand like a senator. When Tommy got his draft notice in the spring of 1969, it was Walter who drove him to the induction center in Columbus. And it was Walter who promised, standing in that parking lot with the engine still running, that when Tommy got home, the 2 of them were going to do the one thing they'd talked about their whole lives. They were going to jump out of an airplane. It had been their dream since they were 12 years old and saw a parachute demonstration at the county fair. Tommy had made Walter swear on it, hand on the roof of the car. "We're doing this the day I get back, Walt. I don't care if you're scared. We're doing it." Tommy Greer came back from Vietnam in January of 1973, but he came back in a flag-draped coffin, and Walter Briggs stood at that graveside in the frozen Ohio ground and couldn't say a single word. 50 years passed. Life moved. Marriage, children, grandchildren, funerals, retirements, seasons. The promise stayed buried under all of it. Not forgotten, never forgotten. Just carried, heavy and quiet, the way certain griefs are. Then, the week after Thanksgiving, Walter's granddaughter Lily came home from college with a video on her phone. Some 80-year-old man making a tandem skydive for his birthday, laughing, arms wide open. "Grandpa," she said, "you should do something like that." Walter didn't say anything. He just stared at the screen for a very long time. He called Buckeye Sky Adventures on a Tuesday morning. He told the woman on the phone he wanted to book a tandem skydive. She was cheerful, professional. Then she asked his age. When he told her, there was a pause. "Sir, we do have an upper age limit for liability reasons. I'll need to have you speak with our director and get a physician's clearance." Another pause. At 83, we'll also need a cardiac evaluation. His doctor, Jim Callahan, who had been his doctor for 22 years, looked at him over the rim of his glasses when Walter explained what he wanted the clearance for. Then he said carefully, "Walter, your heart is fine. Your blood pressure is managed. But I have to be honest with you. A jump like this, the altitude, the cold, the shock of free fall, it carries real risk at your age. I can't tell you not to do it, but I can tell you to think hard." "I've been thinking hard for 47 years, Walter said. Daniel was not subtle about it. "Dad, this is insane. You're 83 years old. You've got arthritis in both knees. What if something goes wrong up there? What if—" "Then something goes wrong," Walter said. "But I made Tommy a promise, Danny, and I'm the only one left who can keep it." Daniel went quiet. That was the thing about Walter Briggs. He didn't argue. He just stated facts, and the facts had a way of ending conversations. The clearance came through. The jump was scheduled. But 3 weeks before the date, Walter slipped on a patch of ice on his back porch and cracked 2 ribs. He lay there on the frozen boards for a moment, staring up at the Ohio sky, and he almost laughed. Almost. The doctor wanted him to wait 6 months. The jump center said they could reschedule. Karen drove up from Columbus and told him, gently but firmly, that maybe this was a sign, that maybe it was okay to let it go. Tommy never got to let anything go, Walter said. He didn't have the option. The weeks after the fall were the hardest Walter could remember since he'd buried his wife Margaret 9 years before. He couldn't sleep right. He couldn't get comfortable. And every morning, he woke up aware of the clock. Not the clock on the wall, but the one inside him, the one no man can stop. He turned 83 in February. He sat at the table with Lily and Karen and Daniel on a video call and a store-bought cake in front of him. And he thought, how many more birthdays are there? How many more chances? He thought about Tommy Greer, who never had the chance to grow old, who never had a bad back or cracked ribs or a doctor looking at him with cautious eyes, who had trusted Walter completely with a handshake on the roof of a car in a Columbus parking lot, that this one thing would happen. Walter put down his fork. He looked at his family on that screen and in that room, and he said quietly, I'm doing it in May. He healed slower than he wanted, but he healed. Every morning, he walked further down Route 9. He did the stretches the physical therapist showed him faithfully in the kitchen before coffee. He ate better. He slept more. He called Lily every Sunday, and she called him right back if he forgot. And one night in April, he found a box in the hall closet he hadn't opened in years. Inside it, Tommy's letters from Vietnam. 11 of them written on thin paper in a handwriting that had gotten smaller and more careful as the months went on. Walter read every one of them that night at the kitchen table with a glass of water and the lamp on. The second to last letter, written in the fall of 1972, ended with, Don't you back out on me, Walt. I'm counting on that jump. You better be standing on that airfield when I get home. Walter folded the letter carefully. He put it in the pocket of his flannel shirt close to his chest. And he slept better that night than he had in months. May the 14th was a Saturday. The sky over central Ohio was the kind of blue that doesn't apologize for itself. Walter Briggs drove himself to the airfield. He'd made that clear to everyone who offered. He drove himself in the same truck he'd been driving since 1998, down the same flat roads he'd known his whole life. Karen was already there. Lily was there. Even Daniel had flown in from Phoenix. He hadn't told his father he was coming. When Walter stepped out of the truck and saw his son standing there in a Harlan's Creek High School jacket he hadn't worn since the 90s, he stopped walking for a moment. Then he nodded once. That was enough. Corey, his tandem instructor, had been told the story. He didn't make a big deal of it. He just looked Walter in the eye during the briefing and said, Mr. Briggs, I've got you. You just worry about enjoying the view. On the plane ride up, Walter didn't talk much. He held Tommy's letter in the pocket of his jumpsuit, folded 4 times, right against his ribs, the ones that had healed. He looked out the small oval window at the Ohio farmland falling away beneath him, getting smaller and softer and more beautiful the higher they climbed. He could see Harlan's Creek from up there. He was almost sure of it. The water tower, the grain elevator, Route 9 like a thin gray thread. And then the door opened. Walter Briggs stood at the edge. The wind hit him like a wall of cold water. Below him, 12,000 feet of open air, and down at the bottom of all that nothing, the Ohio he had loved his whole life. He didn't hesitate, not for a single second. He thought of Tommy Greer. He thought of a parking lot in Columbus. He thought of a handshake on the roof of a car. And he jumped. 50 seconds of free fall. 50 seconds of the most impossible freedom Walter Briggs had ever felt in 83 years of living. The wind tore the sound right out of his throat. The world was just sky and speed and something that felt, there was no other word for it, like relief. Like setting down something he'd been carrying for a very long time. When the chute opened, the noise stopped. Just stopped. And Walter was floating, gently, above everything. Above the fields and the roads, and the church steeple, and the grain elevator, and the little white house on Route 9. He reached into his jumpsuit pocket and held Tommy's letter in his fist. "I didn't back out, Tom," he said. Nobody heard him, just the sky. When his feet touched the grass, Karen reached him first. She didn't say anything. She just wrapped her arms around him and held on. Then Lily, then Daniel, who had not cried in front of his father since his mother's funeral, and who was not doing a great job of hiding it now. Walter Briggs laughed, not a polite laugh, a deep, chest-shaking, 83 years in the making laugh that startled the ground crew and made Corey break into a wide grin. The story ran in the Harlan's Creek Gazette 2 weeks later. Then a Columbus TV station picked it up. Then, because the world occasionally gets things right, it spread further than that. Letters came to the house on Route 9. Emails that Karen printed out and brought up on weekends. From veterans who recognized something in Walter's story. From old men who had their own Tommies. From young people who had never heard of Harlan's Creek, Ohio, and now couldn't forget it. Walter answered every single letter, by hand. That summer, Karen and Lily helped him place a small bench at the edge of Harlan's Creek Cemetery near Tommy Greer's grave. It was a simple bench, nothing fancy, just wood and iron, with a small plate that read, "For Tommy, I kept my word." We talk a lot about living without regret. But Walter Briggs understood something deeper than that. He understood that a promise isn't just a contract between two people. It's a measure of who you decide to be. And the most important promises you'll ever keep aren't the ones made in front of witnesses, or written in contracts, or celebrated at ceremonies. They're the ones made quietly on an ordinary afternoon, to someone who trusted you completely. Those are the ones that define you. Those are the ones worth boarding the plane for. If Walter's story reminded you of a promise you're still carrying, or someone you never got to thank, tell us about it in the comments. And subscribe for more stories about ordinary Americans doing extraordinary things.